Welcome to this week's edition of Black Authors Matter TV, where we interview the latest movers and shakers in the African American literary community. You'll meet some old friends, discover new ones, and stay abreast of the latest book developments around the country and even the world. So sit back and relax for the next 2 hours with Black Authors Matter TV co-hosts Breanne Richardson and Dr. Rhonda Lawson.
Good evening. It's August 8th. I was getting ready to say July. It's August 8th. And you have reached Black Authors Matter TV. I'm Breanne Richardson, your host for tonight, along with my co-host,
Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Good evening, everyone.
And you all haven't seen us both for a couple of weeks, but we're both on tonight. And so we're happy to have you all back with us once again. We have an amazing lineup again this week, as we always do. And we have a few announcements before we bring on our first guest. So first, the National Black Books Festival for this year is rapidly approaching. We're at 96% capacity. So anybody who wants to get in on being an author vendor, publisher vendor, small business vendor, your window of opportunity is closing quickly. I'm estimating by the 15th, we will be sold out. And also next Tuesday's show, we will be announcing the Black Authors Matter Children's Book Award finalists. So you'll get to see all of the people that the judging committee thought rose to the occasion. The cream rises to the top. And so there are quite a few finalists this year because we have a few more categories. So I think there are 5 finalists in each category. I think we may have 8 categories this year, and we only had 5 last year. So we might have 9. But anyway, you'll find out next week. So it'll be the second half of the show. And so we're going to bring on our first guest tonight, and we are going to be giving away the advanced reading copy of her book. So this is her book, her latest book. It's called The God of Good Looks. And our guest is Breanne McIvor. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. It could be Breanne, but she will tell us how her name should be pronounced. And we welcome her to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, you pronounced it perfectly.
Oh, okay. And you write about life in the Caribbean, but you do it from a fictional standpoint. And this new book came out in May. We just hadn't had a chance to get you on the show since it came out. But just give us some background on why you chose the Caribbean as your setting for your books.
Sure. Well, I am born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. The only time I lived outside of the country was when I did my degrees in the UK. And so it just felt so natural to me to write about home and to write about what I knew. And I think that because I lived in the Caribbean for my whole life, everything that was around me was pretty normal. And it was only really going away to study and then later getting early readers' impressions of this book that I realized that some of the things that maybe I took for granted about the Caribbean or about Trinidad were surprising to some people. And they would say, oh, I didn't know that you had this in Trinidad, or I didn't know that it was like that. So I was very happy that the book was able to have those conversations, but I just think I was drawn to it because it's home, it's all around.
So what are some of the things that people don't know about where you're from?
I think one of the things that surprised people is that the book is set in the Caribbean beauty industry. And one of the main characters is a sort of legendary Caribbean makeup artist. And I remember when I had early readers for this book, I would get comments like, oh, how is Obadiah Cortland so good at makeup if he's from Trinidad? Or where would he learn to do makeup in Trinidad? Or is this sort of fashion
But
industry.
they don't have makeup in Trinidad?
Well, exactly. It was this sort of surreal experience where I'm like, okay, the book is fiction, but what I'm writing about is real. And so it's almost like you're defending your lived experiences through defending like a work of fiction. So yeah, and then I think on the reverse side, the other thing that surprised people was the crime, because Trinidad, we actually have the 6th highest crime rate in the world. And I remember when I was first pitching this book, there were people who said, look, the sort of Caribbean stereotype is, sun, sea, and sand. Let's lean into that a little bit. Like, you have to have, so much crime in the novel. So I think there were sort of surprises on different ends of the spectrum.
Well, a lot of people see the Caribbean as an extension of the United States, pretty much, and a destination for vacations. I know I haven't been to Trinidad, but I have been to, Jamaica several times. Where else have I been? Oh, St. Martin, St. Thomas, the Cayman Islands.
I've only been to the Bahamas.
I've never been to the Bahamas.
That's
So,
and that was on a cruise.
Well, all of mine have been on cruises. So that was all, it was all the cruise destinations. And I've been to Honduras and Belize and Costa Rica and Panama, but it's all cruise destinations. So I don't know, the cruise lines, which cruise line comes to Trinidad, and where does it go? Where the ones that stop in Trinidad, where else do they go? Do you know the answer to that?
No, I don't actually know. We are not like such a big tourist country compared to a lot of the other Caribbean islands. Tobago, who is Trinidad's sister island, they are more of a tourist country, but I don't think that we are as tourism focused, and never is that more apparent than when I go to other islands and I see what the customer service is like in other places. And I say, no, you're used to getting tourists. Like, it's not this good home. So I don't actually know how many cruise ships we get. A lot of the people who come to Trinidad sort of come on business. So we have like, a lot of business people who come and then they might stay, or our big tourist event is Carnival. So people might come, to wear the costumes for the sort of parade, that type of thing.
I've heard of it there.
Carnival. I'm gonna go to Carnival after I stop going to CrossFit. I need to get right to go to Carnival, because those outfits, they'll make you feel bad about yourself.
Listen, like, I see some of them and I'm like, to wear this for 2 days, like, I can't.
So tell us about your book, The Guide of Good Looks, and what is it about? What's your basic plot? Don't give us any spoilers or anything about that, but just what's the basic plot?
Spoiler free.
Okay.
So Bianca Bridge, she has been disgraced after an affair with a married government minister. She's fired from her job and she's basically like the laughing stock of the country. And she agrees to work for the only person who will hire her, who's this brilliant but temperamental makeup artist, Obadiah Cortland. And of course, Bianca and Obadiah don't get along. They have clashing personalities. But when Bianca's former lover, the minister, threatens everything that she's been rebuilt in her life, she basically has to ask if she's able to finally stand up to him, or if she's going to take it again and discover whether she and Obadiah are better working together or not.
Okay, so it's basically like a lovers. Is it like a romance?
It has elements of romance. I think that it is, there is this sort of will they, won't they kind of slow burn romance element to it. But it's also, I kind of think like Bridget Jones' Diary meets The Devil Wears Prada in Trinidad.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah,
So what did they give you because I've heard a couple of different sound bites, so to speak. But what was it that gave you the inspiration for this book? Was it the island itself? Was it the belief that this man can't do makeup, or what was it what was that one thing that gave you that inspiration?
I think that the inspiration came partly out of my lived experience because I also used to work as a professional makeup artist.
Mm.
And I got into the industry previously having known nothing about it. When I went to the sort of like makeup artistry school to get a certificate, I was the only person in the class who wasn't already working as a makeup artist.
Mm.
And just stepping into that world blew my mind. It was something that was completely different from, what I had experienced before. So just to give one example, one of the things that we were taught is like, okay, if you're a makeup artist, you can never just leave the house. You always have to be 10 out of 10 because the best advertisement for your services is your face. So beat your face every day, make sure your hair is done, make sure your nails are done. Like, you are advertising your services. And
Makeup artist then, because I don't like wearing makeup every day.
listen, I don't do it now, but after that class, I bought into that. I would be like, you need to give me an hour's notice before I go anywhere because I need to do my face. And living in that world was the inspiration for writing this book. And then, like you said, but because Trinidad was what was all around, because it was the Caribbean beauty industry that I was working in, it just seemed natural to set it there. That's what I was most comfortable with.
Right.
And then I can bring in things like carnival, because carnival makeup is big business in Trinidad. If you are doing carnival makeup, you're starting at midnight, sometimes before, and you have clients like all through the day. There are people who do, like 30, 40 faces, just having people coming on rotation. So it's also a chance to write about, those cultural elements as well.
Now, do you find a difference between the way you do makeup in Trinidad versus an American style of makeup? And I asked that question because I was watching a video yesterday actually, and a lady was talking about the difference between the American style of makeup and the UK style of makeup. And I didn't even think there was a difference. So I was just wondering if you had seen any differences.
I think that we are incredibly influenced by American culture. So all of the sort of dominant TV shows in Trinidad are American. Like, there are people who can tell you more about American politics than they can about our own local politics. And so I think that things from America bleed into Trinidad very much. I do think there's certain cultural differences. So specifically at carnival time, you'll see people who have, like the really colorful eye makeup that they do to sort of match their costumes and that kind of stuff. But that's only at one time. And I think that normally when things are popular in the US, they tend to become popular not too long after in Trinidad because of yep. So the same celebrities, like just people are here, looking at like the makeup Beyonce wears on tour and sort of bringing that to makeup artists and saying, I want to look like this, so.
So what is the main industry? What are the main industries in your country? And tourism is probably one, but what are the main industries?
I would say the big blockbuster industry in Trinidad is oil and gas. That is, the thing that energy is the thing that really earns the money. And because of that, that's why, like I said, we don't get a lot of cruise ships, because our industry in Trinidad specifically is just very oriented towards energy. So we have, there'll be a lot of platforms with people sort of extracting oil, and then a lot of businesses that spring up around that. So you'll have sort of companies serving it. Also, we have sort of like finance sector, manufacturing. But I would say that when you think of other Caribbean countries, some of them have like a 90% dependence on tourism. It's incredibly high. Whereas we have the opposite problem in Trinidad. They say we should try to diversify into tourism because we've been, an oil and gas country for so long. And especially with, what's happening in the world and the push towards things like green energy. There are lots of questions about, well, how is this industry going to survive in the future?
Perfect. I don't think we'll be giving up oil and gas anytime soon. It's just too, it's, there are just too many things that run on it, that depend on it. You can't just like make a switch like that on a dime or even a nickel or whatever. You just can't. It's too embedded in everything. So, but conserving and being more energy efficient is good, but I don't think we have to worry about that. And I'm in Texas, where oil and gas is king. So we have other things too. We have those windmills. When I went on my road trip, that windmill industry is picking up.
I would say this, be careful about falling into the trap of being a tourism country, because being from New Orleans, Louisiana, where we are known for tourism, you need people to work in the tourism industry. And when a person starts getting education to get their bachelor degree, their master's or doctorate or whatever, they don't want to work in the tourism industry. So there's a belief, and I have to do more research to see how true it is, but it makes sense to me. There's a belief that sometimes kids are being pushed through school just so they can work in the tourism industry, because if you have too much education, you won't want to do it. And it's going to take them longer to fill those jobs. And so New Orleans is known for having a weak education system. And that's one of the beliefs for it, that they're just pushing the kids through school just so they can work in the tourism industry.
Yeah,
That's an interesting angle. But a lot of these places that have tourism, when people do go to school, they end up with a brain drain, in that a lot of the people who do go to college and get degrees end up leaving and doing other things. So
I think we have that here too. I think that just sometimes, Trinidad is very small. The population of Trinidad is like 1.3, 1.4 million people.
Oh, is that small? Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
so it's really small. And so I think that sometimes you look out there, you look at a country like the US, and you just think, well, there must be more opportunities there because of the size of the country, or maybe what you want to do is something that's very niche. And so it's quite common here to meet people who will say things like, oh, you have to get out of here. I think coupled with the crime, that's quite common. And so there are sort of two sides of it. There are people who say, yeah, well, if everybody leaves, then what's going to happen to the country?
Right.
And people who say, yeah, but I want to leave.
Taking over your country, and you don't want that either.
Yeah, that's true. Criminals will take over. The county that I live in, Harris County in Texas, has 5 million people. Just the county has 5 million people.
We can fit into that.
Yeah, it's big. It's big. It's land-wise. It's really big, but and we have a lot of people moving here too, for work and so forth. So I did want to ask this question about, you said the books that you read about the Caribbean, a lot of them focus on the colonial past. And what is Trinidad and Tobago's past as compared to some of the other Caribbean countries?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, like a lot of Caribbean countries, our history is colonization, slavery, indentureship, and that history, like the sort of plantation society that literally existed in Trinidad for hundreds of years, just completely shaped the country and shaped a lot of the Caribbean. Because most of the indigenous people were exterminated. They were very small pockets. And then it was a country that was plantations, and the purpose was to make money for the mother country, England. And so a lot of books are sort of grappling with that history. And I mean, we became independent in 1962. So my grandparents, both still alive, were born into a colony. Trinidad didn't exist when they were born. My mom was born just on the cusp of independence, and I always lived in an independent country. So even across 3 generations, you have people who, knew different areas of colonialism. And then unfortunately, there are sort of aspects of the history, the plantation history, that sort of continue through to everyday life now. And, there's a saying that I have in the book, sort of like something we say locally, like massa day done, to be like, okay, like the plantation owners still aren't in control anymore. But I remember I was working somewhere and, sometimes you'd be treated in a particular way, like the people who were in charge would treat you just kind of like, oh gosh, like regardless of your job, can you go and get the coffee? Can you go and do this? Can you go and do that? And, we would say like, massa they done, don't they realize that? So you do see, the history just continuing to sort of echo through the present. And a lot of books that I read were sort of set in colonial times, set in plantation times, sort of examining that history. And part of what I wanted to do here in this book is to be like, okay, but this isn't about that, those times specifically, but the characters are grappling with the effects of that society still.
So your book is a more modern,
Right.
You wanted to make it contemporary.
I see the value in both, actually, because I see the value in contemporary fiction, because we can't always live in the past. But at the same time, when we have books that draw on the past, it helps to keep that interest in the history of your country. It doesn't get lost. So, I mean, I see the value in both, but I do agree, by focusing on contemporary, it shows that, hey, history is history, but we still have life going on now. There are still stories that are happening now. So maybe a little bit of both, you think?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that particularly because, during things like slavery and indentureship, we couldn't tell our own stories. So people who are able to go back and write stories from, what would have been the perspective of their ancestors, there's also something powerful in that. And like you said, keeping the past alive, having a way to access, this, even if it's a book of fiction, is dealing with something that wasn't, the not too distant past, a reality of the country.
Right.
I mean, I love historical fiction. But I also like agree with you that, sometimes contemporary books, particularly for somewhere like Trinidad, which isn't somewhere that has a lot of, sort of international currency. There are countries like the US and India where people have a very clear idea of, what it's like. They're just such huge presences in the world. But when you're writing about a small country, sometimes there may be readers who may have never read a book set there before, or hadn't really thought of it, because it's, like just this tiny island in a string of islands in the Caribbean. So I do think, there's also value in the contemporary, and in sometimes having a conversation with readers about, what might be the contemporary realities of a country.
It's a celebration of the country.
I hope so.
I have another question about your country. In the last 10 years or so, several of the Caribbean countries have had hurricanes that have come through and been devastating, or tropical storms that have been very devastating and disrupted life for months. So have you all been spared from?
We have not had a really bad hurricane, but we have had really bad flooding, as in, people's houses being flooded, losing their possessions. I think that, it's gotten worse over time and with global warming. And because, the Caribbean, the islands are so small, they're completely surrounded by the sea. So if there's anything sort of like coming across the Atlantic, it's very easy to pass sometimes over the whole island. And I remember, flooding when I was a child, and that was a relatively minor thing, and it didn't happen with this level of frequency. Okay, yeah, there's flooding, and you're like, right, it might kind of come up a little bit, but the types of floods that we've seen recently where people have lost everything, or landslides have destroyed houses, destroyed possessions, that has happened a lot more recently. And I think it's something that, honestly, it's just a question for all of the Caribbean in the future. How can you deal with this? Like, how do you cope with it? That type of thing.
I'm very glad you touched on that, because sometimes we forget, we'll see that a hurricane is coming and they'll say it's in the Caribbean, and we're like, oh, it's in the Caribbean, it's not here. But we forget sometimes that, yes, it's in the Caribbean, but there are still people who are in the Caribbean who are dealing with these hurricanes. And, yeah, it's nice that it's not hitting our homes, but it's affecting somebody else's homes. So we should still be keeping those people in prayer.
Thank you. That's lovely.
And New Orleans has definitely had its share of weather.
I was just gonna say, yeah, like, I mean, it's something that, I think that anybody, once they're affected by that type of loss, even when you rebuild, it just sort of stays in the psyche, and this memory of what it's like to not have the basic things, and sometimes you don't even realize until something happens. It might be something small, and you'll be like, oh, I should cut my nails, and then you're like, oh no, never got another nail clipper.
Yeah, or just not having power for several days. We have had our share of hurricanes in Houston, but when they come through, Houston is so big that it may affect one side of town and not the other. I forgot which one came through my area, and that was my first time being in the eye of a hurricane, where it comes through, then you're in the eye, and it's like the sun comes out and you think it's over, and then the other side of the storm comes through. I forgot which hurricane that was. It's been in the last 10 years, I want to say, or so. So it's more than an ocean. We've been spared in terms of personally. We've never had our possessions or flooded or anything. And where we are now, we're on higher ground. So, but you just never know. It's unpredictable, and you can track them only to a certain extent, because they change directions. You think it's going one way, it goes another way. So, well, I do have one more question before we end the interview. Do you have other books on the Caribbean? Is this part of a series, or?
Well, this is my first novel, but I do also have a collection of short stories called Where There Are Monsters.
Okay.
And that is more about the sort of like kind of supernatural Caribbean, like it's looking on like a modern take on our folklore. And then with this, I just did, I think people who knew that book were shocked that I went into a book with like sort of makeup, fashion, and beauty. But I love being able to do such diverse things. And I'm hoping that it will be the first novel of many. So fingers crossed.
Okay. Well, HarperCollins sent us this one, and they sent us the advanced reading copy. So the trivia question that I had, we've talked about it so much during the interview that it won't work for a trivia question. So,
well, you know what? They should have been listening. We should go ahead and do it anyway.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do it. The author, Breanne McIvor, lives in which Caribbean country? The first person to answer gets the advanced reading copy.
Give me a chance to type it, y'all.
I sent it to you, so you should just.
I got it in there.
Okay, and hopefully I didn't make any mistakes. Okay, so thank you so much, Breanne, and congratulations on your book, and continued success in your writing.
Thank you so much, both of you, for having me. This has been wonderful, and thank you for everything you're doing for authors.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for sharing your story with us. And thank you for celebrating your country. This is why we read, so we can escape to other worlds. And this has given us the opportunity to do that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, and by the way, we have an answer.
Yes, I saw that. So I think Lydia was first.
Yes, she was first.
It wasn't spelled correctly, but we know what she meant. So we will accept it. Lydia, you get the copy of The God of Good Luck.
Yeah.
McIvor. So thank you again, Breanne, for being a guest on the show. And when you do your next book, hopefully we'll get an alert about it and we can have you back.
I would love that. I'm already looking forward to it.
Okay.
Okay.
Put your link in the chat. So if anybody wants to order this book, go ahead and click on her link. It is in the chat right now.
Thank you.
Okay, have a great evening.
You too. Bye.
Okay, so we have one more book to give away, but we're going to do it after the next interview. And so we can continue right along with our guests. So our next guest is Phyllis Dixon. She has a new book called Intermission. It's a novel. And what I want to find out from Phyllis is, and I'd like her to share her journey with the audience. She did at least 2 self-published novels, and then she got a book deal for this one, Intermission. And I don't know if she got a 2-book deal or 3-book deal or how that whole thing worked, but she's an example of someone who self-published first and then came to the attention of someone somehow, and she signed with one of the larger publishers.
I tell authors all the time, there's nothing wrong with self-publishing first. Show the publishers that you're willing to work and that people want to read your stories, and they will come. Isn't that right, Miss Phyllis?
That's right. Delay is not denial.
Right. That's right. So Phyllis, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Well, thank you. So happy to be here.
And thank you for being here.
You're welcome. So I see your book behind you. Can you put it in front of the camera so people can see it a little bit better? Or is that a backdrop? Okay. All right, there you go. Intermission. And that is her new book. It just recently came out a couple of weeks ago, I believe, July 25th.
Right.
Is that the release date?
Congratulations. How long is your book? It looks pretty thick.
It's about 300 pages.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, solid page count. So that's a lot of words. I don't know exactly how many words 300 pages comprise, but I believe it's at least 50,000. So.
Oh yeah, it's more like close to 90.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I guess that would be more like a 200-page book, the 50,000.
Well, the story is about 4 characters, the 4 women that were in the singing group. So it's told from each character's point of view. So they each kind of have a story, and then their story makes up the whole story.
Okay, so they're treated individually, and then they come together at some point in the storyline. Is that what happened?
Right.
In terms of
it kind of mixes and mingles.
The terms of the story.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. And so why is it called intermission? I guess for a singing group, it's like the intermission in a show, like if you go to a concert.
Right. Well, the story is about 4 girls who sang in a group as teens, won a contest, became successful. Just as they were on the verge of crossing over to mega success, they broke up. So now it's 20 years later, and they have a chance to reunite, and they're all considering it for different reasons. But they all also vowed not to speak to each other. And so they each have a different version of what happened. And of course, each, they say there's 3 versions, your version, my version, and the truth. So the truth is somewhere in between. And then intermission is how they get to that truth. So intermission is just the time frame between when they broke up and when they thought about getting back together.
That sounds like a fun story to read.
It's
I'm
also very common
Well,
among,
that was my intention. I didn't hear you go in.
I said it's very common among singing groups.
Exactly. And that's something that always intrigued me because they seem to have similar stories. And so it's kind of like, why does this always happen? And then also my background is actually finance and banking. So that was another thing that intrigued me was how did they make all this money and then end up broke? Because, you always think if that was me, that would never happen to me.
Right.
So that's also part of the story as to what happens and what happens to the money and just the interdynamics of the women and why you can see why, again, like I said, from each person's point of view, why they thought they were right in their part in the breakup.
That's one thing that always intrigued me about watching the show Unsung. I don't know if it still comes on or not, but seems like every singing group had the same exact experience. And you just wonder, why didn't they talk? Like, why didn't they share some of the common experiences
Right.
so they wouldn't keep living the same experience? It's like the beginning, the middle, and the end is always the same.
Well, then intermission, then you'll see why they didn't talk.
I think it's just something when you put all this money in front of somebody who didn't grow up with money, who didn't have money, things like this can happen. It's like they have more money than they've ever had before, and they think it's endless until it ends.
Right.
Yeah,
And the other
usually
thing is, it's
someone
not
else-
really as much money as you think it is, as we think
No,
it is.
because they don't factor in taxes. And that is very common that they don't. And then a lot of them end up on the IRS or going bankrupt because of taxes. But also they put other people in charge of their money. And they think that people that are in charge of their money have their best interests at heart when I'm going to say most of the time they're stealing the money from the people. And really, it's nothing you can do once the money is gone because you put them in charge of the money. And they can always claim they were owed it for services rendered or something. They can always claim it. And then it's your word against theirs. Then you got to get lawyers involved and the lawyers get all the money. So it's challenging. That kind of fame in that industry, it might seem like it's a come up, but a lot of times it's just a headache. It ends up being a headache.
Well, and then even in the book industry, I mean, there's sort of a parallel, and I can see how that happened because, again, it took me a long time to get to this point. So when I finally got an agent and we got a deal, and I'm like, where do I sign? She says, no, wait, you need to look at that. And by, this point, he's just like, I don't care. I just want the deal. I want a deal. I want a deal. So you can see how that, especially somebody younger too.
Yeah.
I can understand how that happens.
And if it happens to somebody in finance, which is what you're in, just imagine what happens to a novice who really doesn't really know much about much, just a kid. Right. And they have talent, but they don't really know much. And so they can get taken advantage of. And their parents, a lot of times, their success or them signing the deal is for the whole family. It's not just for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's to help.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't sign, there's 20 other people who will.
Right. Right. And they tell you that too.
Yeah.
I got 10 other people that I can sign tomorrow. That's one of the things that they say.
Right.
Right.
So
and that's one of the things that's kind of interesting. I live in Memphis. And so one of the things that's interesting about Memphis is you have a lot of mostly Stax, but other labels too. And so you have a lot of people that used to be in the industry, and people here are just kind of nonchalant about it. But it's very interesting to see because I know I went to church with a guy that had been in the Barcades. I went to Al Green's church thinking it's going to be this big, mega church. And it's not, it's a regular church. I was in the library one time in the ladies' room, and somebody was singing, and I just came out and said, "Oh, you have a lovely voice," and it was Carla Thomas. So you see, these people, they, had big success as far as we could see, but on the flip side, the money doesn't last forever. So
Yeah,
for most of them,
That's a really sad
definitely not.
story that you would run into these people who were huge in the industry but had nothing and have nothing to show for it now.
well, and that's not to say that they have nothing, but they just live regular lives.
Right.
So they're not, they're not on this, on the stage and, big superstars anymore. So that's kind of the lady's story in the book. They're not broke, well, not all of them, but they're, dealing with being regular people.
So is your inspiration for writing the book, was it just living in Memphis and seeing this happen every day?
Well, okay, I'm going to date myself. But when I was a little girl, very, 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 very little, my career aspiration was to become a member of the Supremes. And so when the Supremes broke up, I was just devastated. I was so heartbroken. I was mad at Diana Ross for years, wouldn't listen to her music, anything like that. And of course, I got over all that. But so that was something that I just kind of always thought about, what would happen if they got back together? And I would think about that and just, make up stories about it and just go on and do something else. And actually, I wrote 2 books before I wrote this book, but that was just an idea that never left me. So when COVID hit, I figured I had no distractions and I could just finish it and see where it landed. Because particularly, as you said, it is kind of a common story that we hear.
A lot of books came out of COVID. I mean, a lot of people had time to write, and
Yeah,
they're still coming. Because the timeline when you're with a big publisher
right,
is so long. So we still
right.
have books that are being released, and some good ones. I wanted to ask you, you said you ran into someone who was with the Barcades. Do you remember his name? Because we had somebody at the festival.
Oh yeah,
I think it was in 2019
it was in
or
2019.
2018, one of them.
No, I know who you had. Yeah, no, it wasn't him. Because
Wasn't him.
again, but he's another example, because he came to I'm in a book club, and he came to our book club. I can't think of his name now either, but I know who you're talking about, but no, it wasn't him.
Okay, because he had written a memoir, and he came to the
Right,
with his memoir.
right. Who's the lead singer?
Yeah, if
Now
I had,
that's going to bother me all day till I think of his
I can
name.
go back and look at the previous festival flyers and find them, but his name is not coming to me. And I didn't know you were going to mention the Barcades, so I didn't have it. Didn't have it in my head because I haven't thought of his name since then. That's been 4 or 5 years ago. So, but he came, and he had a memoir that he talked about. He didn't sing though, but we didn't have him on the program to sing. I don't even know if he still does. Are you looking for Rhonda?
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now because I interviewed him and I know exactly who you're talking about. And his face is,
He had a hat on.
He had blonde hair.
And no, he didn't have blonde hair.
he was older.
He was old. Well, at the Barcades, he had to be older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was like a real short, but it was like blondish.
Glasses, and he wore a hat. I remember that. So I wanted to find out about your 2 previous books that you wrote and how those did. What were they, contemporary or historical, or what kind of novels those were? And then what was your process for reaching out to, I know you got an agent, but even reaching out to find an agent?
Okay, well, the first book was titled 40 Acres, and I just happen to have it here.
Okay, wonderful.
And it's the story of C.W. Washington. And he rose from being a sharecropper's son to the largest Black landowner in his county, and he's had a stroke. And so now the family has to decide what to do with the land, and they're fighting over the land, and it occurs at a family reunion weekend. So basically family drama. And
Okay.
then the second book is Down Home Blues, and it's the same family, not necessarily a sequel, but it is the same family. And in this story, the 4 adult siblings, due to divorce, domestic violence, foreclosure, and an all-expense paid trip, otherwise known as prison, end up back home, and home is Eden, Arkansas. So again, just more family drama. And with those took me a while to, try to get an agent, try to get a publisher and all of that. And so with 40 Acres. And so when it started taking longer than I thought it should, I just said, well, I'll just do it myself. So those 2 were self-published. And I think they did pretty well. The thing that happened that I didn't understand at the time, during my job, I traveled quite a bit. So I would set up book engagements wherever I was going for my job. So basically I got Uncle Sam to pay for my travel. So, well, I went a lot of places and did well when I went there. It was over a protracted time frame. So there was never, I couldn't really gain traction as far as making any lists or, publishers. When you go to them, they want to know how much did you sell in the first 18 months, that type of thing. So that was the deal with those 2. So like I said, with intermission, by now I'm a little older and I don't really feel like shipping books. Maybe I've gotten lazy in my older years here. And I don't really feel like shipping books and doing all that. So, and plus, again, you see other people doing it, not that, you're comparing yourself, but I'm feeling like, God has that for me too. So I was just very diligent. It was almost harder to find an agent than to find a publisher. But I persevered and found an agent. And then once that happened, then things started falling into place.
Yeah, I think all of the big publishers require you to have an agent. They won't even look at your work without an agent. So you have to get the agent to even get to the publishers. Smaller publishers, not so much, but most of the time, the smaller publisher doesn't offer you an advance. So, depending, they might offer you royalties, hopefully, depending on what you sell. But to get the advance from one of the bigger publishers, you need an agent. And
well, what was one of the biggest surprises when you went from being self-published to being traditionally published? Did you see a difference that may have surprised you?
Well, I don't know if it was a surprise. I think it's just a learning process in that when I did 40 Acres and Down Home Blues, I had them both professionally edited, but it was then primarily me and the editor and maybe one other person, probably my daughter, that read it. But when working with the larger publisher, there's more hands in the pie, but it was helpful. So there were more people that read and more people that read for different things. And also from things I had heard from being in the industry, had always heard that, the publishers, unless you're, a big person, they really don't do much for you and all of that. And I have to say Kensington has been very helpful to me. They're not sending me on a big tour or anything like that, but they have been very helpful, a lot of resources. So I think that was kind of the surprising thing to me is how helpful they have been and how collaborative the process is.
That's great to know.
I've heard some good things about Kensington as far as working with it, because they're an imprint of a bigger publisher. I forgot who owns Kensington now.
Well, it's Defina is actually the imprint of Kensington.
Okay. Because I thought Kensington was also imprint of somebody, but maybe not. Maybe they're still independent. So Tony Benita said your book is 356 pages. She got a copy last weekend at the National Book Club Conference.
Oh, okay. Good.
So
thank you.
You've been busy hitting the different events, and because I see you have another event coming up in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yes, on the 26th, I'll be in Jackson at Lemuria Books. So I'm looking forward to that. Met also at that same event last weekend or 2 weekends ago now. I guess I met several people from Jackson, Mississippi. So looking
Oh,
forward to
okay.
that one.
And you're going to be at the National Black Book Festival as well.
That's right. Coming your way, which used to be my way. I lived
Yeah.
in Houston for several years. So I'm
Okay.
looking forward to that.
Okay. Someone
And
said
coming to Houston is like coming home.
coming home. Someone wants to, Lydia said, repeat the name. So I don't know if she means the name of the book or your name, but your name is on the screen, Phyllis Dixon. The name of the book is Intermission. It's one word title.
Right.
And Curtis Stevenson said that he's been to Al Green's church and that you're right. It's not a very big church at all.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I was surprised.
Yeah, a lot of times.
And even
Well, I
no,
was
go
just
ahead.
saying, a lot of times celebrities will start churches and people don't go to church for that. And if they are, then that's kind of like being a groupie, sort of, you know.
Mhm.
I don't know any celebrities that have extended, large churches for an extended period of time, because that takes building a
Right.
church is a major commitment. And it's a
Right.
24/7 job. As a PK, it's a 24/7 job. It's not a glamorous job. A lot of people think it is, but if you're really committed to ministry, it's a 24/7
Yeah.
job. And it's not, sometimes it can be a thankless job. It can be rewarding, but people feel like you're at their beck and call, sort of, all the time.
Tony
Well,
Bennett.
I understand that even just from my point of view. My husband, who's deceased now, he was the property manager for a church. And so, like you say, people, they want to stay open for practice. They want to open early for this, come in for that. We need these tables, all that kind of. So I understand. It's too hot up here. We need some heat, all of that. So I understand.
Well, Tony Benita said that Down Home Blues is a good book.
Yeah. Well, ask her, well, not ask her, suggest that she put a review on Amazon, Goodreads, all those places.
You hear that,
Okay.
Tony?
Yeah. And Tony, she's everywhere with books. So she does live streams herself with book packages she's gotten in the mail, like over the last week or two. And she wins the books on this show, and then she'll tag me when she's doing her live stream to tell people she won the book on the show. So she's everywhere with books. She's prolific, committed, and all that. A big reader. If you need somebody to read, like have a beta reader or just somebody to do, she's a good one. I'm wondering how many books she reads. Tony, if you're listening, which I'm assuming you are since you're commenting, how many books do you read a month? That would be curious. I'm curious about that. Just because she seems like she reads them all. All the ones that come out.
Renee Candace said that your covers are awesome, especially Down Home Blues.
And Renee Candace is my daughter.
Okay, well, hey,
And that's her.
What book was for.
You need the support.
Yeah, that's her on the cover.
Well, you know what that is.
She's my model. Thank you.
It's wonderful to include the family in your project.
Yeah, see, Candace, it's wonderful. When I was working, again, this is one that I self-published. So when I was trying to do the cover, I guess I didn't realize initially that when you get things from the internet, if you're just going to use them, that's okay. But if you're going to use them commercially, then you have to pay quite a bit of money. Right. And so I was like, oh no, I can't pay $1,000. And so that's what she said. Well, I can be your model and you can give me $1,000. I said, well, you can be my model for free. So that's Candace.
Oh, and by the way, the singer we were talking about earlier was Larry Dodson.
That's right.
It.
That was him.
Yes.
Thank you, Rhonda, for looking that up for me. So, but for future reference, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars. if you get a stock photo and you buy one that's royalty free, and they have them, I think iStock is one, it's different companies. You only have to pay a small amount up to a certain print run. So I think it's like 10,000 books. Most people don't print that many over time. I've never paid more than $25 or $50 for a stock photo for a cover.
Well, the problem with stock covers,
Okay.
and I'll tell you, Victoria Christopher Murray and I have the same book cover. But
Yeah, they show up more than once.
Right. And that's the thing I don't like about stock covers.
But you can change, you can make it look kind of sort of different depending on what you do with it. You know, I haven't seen one of my pictures I've seen, not on other books though, I've seen it in other settings. But the other one, I've never seen it anywhere. So, but when you get like an illustrator or something like that, or a person to do a digital cover, that's a lot more expensive. Although you can find.
And that was one thing. Well, and that's one thing too, going from the self-publisher to the publisher. The intermission cover was not at, they asked me what was my vision, and what they came up with was nowhere near what my vision was, but I liked that. And I think, they did a good job. So that again comes to, with having somebody with more resources at their disposal.
Right, because they have in-house cover designers for all the different books they do. So they they normally will give you different options. I've never talked to a big publisher, been approached by one. I just hear it from all the people that I talk to that are with them. So I get to hear about what the process is. So did you get a 1-book deal, a 2-book deal, or a 3-book deal with this one?
2.
2. So is the second book a sequel?
No. Something totally different.
Okay, well that's good, because usually they want you to do a sequel. That's good.
I love it. I love it. Well, I would say, I know we only have a couple of minutes left. I did put the link to your website in the chat. So we ask you guys, for those of you who have read the books, make sure you leave reviews. If you've not read the book, order the book, and let's support another author, and then leave her a review. Because there are people who will not buy a book unless they read the reviews. So it's very important.
Right.
Love the book, leave a review so other people can support this author. I say this every week.
I appreciate that.
You don't start listening to me.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Reviews are important because I look at them.
Yes.
Now, if a book has like a whole bunch of bad reviews, then that might turn me off. But a lot of times, if it's somebody I know or somebody's work that I respect, I take the reviews with a grain of salt, because it just depends on what a person likes. A lot of times a person will read something that's really not the genre they like or whatever, and instead of just moving on, they'll leave a review, and that's negative. So it's, you have to, it comes with the territory. That's what I say.
Right.
You put your work out there, it's going to be reviewed. And you can't.
And you can't take it personally.
You can't, even though I do, but you can't.
I don't mind a negative review. I just want that negative review to be fair. Tell me a real reason why you didn't like the book. I have all kinds of 4- and 5-star reviews on my books, but then somebody did a drive-by review and just put 2 stars and kept it moving. And that made me more mad than just getting a 2-star review, because they didn't say why. They just left a 2-star review and kept on moving. Let me know where I need to improve if you feel that I need to improve. So I think that's the only thing I don't like about so-called bad reviews. If you're not going to give a fair assessment of the book, then why leave a review?
Right.
Well, Phyllis, congratulations on your latest release and your relationship with Dafina/Kensington, and your next book. When will your next book be out?
July 2024.
Okay, so a year from now. Great. Okay, well,
Mhm.
we'll be on the lookout for it, and congratulations again, and keep writing.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
I'll
thank
see you in a couple months.
Okay, that's right. I hope the heat will be gone by then. Well, I know this 100-degree heat will, but I'm
about heat. The heat will not be gone.
it is, well, the 100-degree heat, that's what I mean. I know. Anyway, it's been brutal. So we'll see you in October.
Sounds good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Have a
Bye-bye.
great night.
You too.
Okay, before our next interview, we're going to give away this second book that we have, and it's called The Perishing. It's by Natasha Dion. And the trivia question for this book is, the setting for this book is the 1930s in what American city? And Rhonda, just put a T on this for me, and because I left it off. And thank you for that. And because sometimes I be going so fast and I don't have a chance to go back and reread my own.
Thing by Natasha Dion, the setting for, oh, okay, I see it.
Yeah, I listened to
What are
you.
you talking about?
I was going so fast. So the set, oh, Stephanie Burnham got it already.
Come on, Stephanie. I didn't even get time to finish the question.
So Stephanie Burnham, you win The Perishing. This is a book, not an art. So it will be on its way to you shortly. So our next guest is, and Curtis Stevenson, he's one of our new viewers. He said he loves the show. He came on last week. But Curtis, you have to be quick on the draw to get ahead of Stephanie. You want to be Mary,
Tony,
Stephanie, Lydia. You have to be quick on
Gwen. See, Gwen's not on tonight, but see, Gwen.
Yeah, Gwen Hayes. They're quick on the draw, and I don't know how they do it because we don't give the books away the same place in the show, but they're ready. They know once we say we have some books to give away, they are ready. So our next guest is Tanisha Stewart, and she is an author of novels as well. She has a series called The Quiet Ones, but she's also a psychologist. She studied psychology. She has a master's in psychology. She's a college professor. So we want to welcome Tanisha to Black Authors Matter TV.
She's from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you doing? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Now, how do you use psychology in your books, or are your books a complete departure from what you do day to day? Like, are they psychological thrillers? Whenever I see something that's a psychological thriller, I always think it's gonna mess with my mind, and so I usually try to avoid them because I don't want something in my head, and then I'm gonna have nightmares, or So anyway. Do you use psychology in your work, or do you do something that's a complete departure?
Most definitely. So I had two majors in college. It was psychology and sociology, and I like to use both of those when I'm writing my books, just to make them more authentic, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like almost every author, regardless of the genre that they write in, they probably are using some elements of both of those, because psychology is just about people and why they are the way they are, why they think the way they think, et cetera, et cetera. So I definitely draw upon that heavily when I'm writing these psychological thrillers.
Well, I think that having a psychology background is an amazing tool for developing your characters. You really know how to use the Johari window and show what they want people to see and what they're really hiding.
Absolutely. And a lot of reviewers who they read my books, they often say like, oh, I could see this person in myself, or I could see this in somebody I know, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the reason why, because it's so ingrained in who we are as people, and how we act and react to given situations.
Yeah, well, there is each of us, the person that is inside, so to speak, and the person that we let people see.
Right.
Absolutely. And you'll see that a lot with this Quiet One series. So it's about a girl who is bullied by her peers heavily, and until she gets to the point where she snaps. So you ever heard that phrase like watch out for the quiet ones, you never know when they might snap? That's basically the backdrop to this whole series, and then what happens after she snaps, essentially.
That reminds me of the girl who got in trouble because
Mhm.
she was so tired of being bullied on the school bus that one
Mhm.
day she took a gun on the school bus, and
Oh,
when she got bullied, she didn't shoot anybody, but she was just holding the gun at people, basically telling them to leave her alone because she was tired of being bullied.
mm,
She got in so much trouble. I mean, which she should have because she had a gun. But at
mhm,
the same time, I felt so bad for her because she was brought to that point because she was
mhm.
bullied so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of times people don't understand the implications of bullying. And like people might think it's just all in fun or everybody does it, et cetera, until they're the brunt of the joke. Or they're the one enduring it. And then it's coming from all sides. So like then once you're put in that situation, then you feel like, okay, what am I supposed to do now? So
Right,
sometimes the reactions can be extreme, like what you just described, or
right.
even worse.
So the Quiet Ones, how many books are in the series?
There's 6 books in the series, and they're all like shorter reads, so they're like 20, 30,000 words each. And each book like gets deeper and deeper into all the characters, and each one has like more twists and turns, and you just delve into different concepts associated with revenge and what happens when you get revenge, how does revenge backfire, et cetera, et cetera. So it's basically like a revenge series and all the things that happen as a result of that.
So these same characters continue in all of the books, or do
Well,
you?
there's new characters that are added like with each one, and you delve deeper into each one as you keep going. But the main character, Shatina, she is in all books.
Okay. Okay. Now, besides you being a psychologist, what made you come up with this? What made you sit down and say, I'm going to write a series? Or did you just start with the first book and then decide to keep it going? You
Well,
know,
actually, okay, so there's a readers group that I'm part of. It's called ICU Reading and Chatting. Ebony Evans, she's like the founder of the group, and it's like a book club slash readers group. And she does these challenges on Fridays called Freestyle Friday. And she gives like the authors like a prompt with like pictures, and she says, "All right, just go and write something." And I always wanted to write a psychological thriller, but then when I was chosen for that Freestyle Friday, the words just started flowing, and I wrote the first book. And then after the first book, people were like, "Oh, there needs to be a part 2. I want to see what happens next. I don't feel like her story is over." And then once they started saying that, like the ideas started flowing. So I was like, all right, let's just make it a series. And then it just became a series from there.
I love that.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Y'all
the readers
both
can,
made it into something.
Oh yeah.
yeah, the readers can egg you on.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I was like, no, I was done with this, but they're like, no, we need more. I was like, okay, all right.
that's they really, the testament to good character development is when the readers think your characters, or they look at your characters as being real people.
Oh yeah.
So that's what happened to me with the one novel. I said, it took me 5 years to write it. I said, this is my one work of fiction, because I'm really more of a nonfiction writer now, children's books too. But I said, this is my one work of fiction. And when it was done, this is it. And then all the readers wanted to know what happened to Lloyd, which is the main character. He's not real.
I was able to make my very first book was a book called Cheating in the Next Room. And the one character who I thought everybody was going to hate was the one that everybody kept asking about. What happened to her? What did she wind up doing? What happened? So I wound up making an entire series based on that character, and I gave her growth.
That's how it goes though. That's really how it goes. The one character or the one story that you feel like nobody's gonna like. They're like, no, we need more of this. You're like, I thought you would like this one, but you like this one instead. So all right, I'll just go where y'all want me to go.
I don't know. I think the likable character is too boring for readers. They like the unlikable character because they want to see what happens next.
Absolutely.
That's true. Although my character like had he evolved. He had a coming of age at 45. so he had a transformation during the story. So that's what made people want to know about him. And then I killed off the really bad person, and then the second to the worst went to prison. So so I had something happen to them that they got their comeuppance. But Lloyd, people wanted to know and I did leave kind of an open-ended, but I wasn't planning to do a sequel. I just, some books end with like not a cliffhanger, but like open-ended. And so I wanted it to be like that. And then that people saw that as, okay, I want to know what happens after that. So you never know. So The Quiet One, now, is this your only series?
Oh no, I have like
so.
a whole lot of series.
Books. That's what I thought. Because
I think it's up to like almost 60 books now, where I have like a bunch of different series. I have standalones. I have all of the above.
Okay, because when you came up to my attention, I forgot how, but I said we need to get her on the show, and that was when did I do this originally? I don't see the date, but I originally printed this out, but I printed out because I didn't want to forget. It was a page about you that I printed out, and I said I need to get her on the show. And so I knew you had multiple books, but are they all? Or what's your writing style? What?
So I have a bunch of different genres that I write in. So I have 4 different genres that are like primary. I have the thrillers, I have Christian fiction and nonfiction, I have young adult, I have romance. And I just started diversifying it, where I have like different pen names where I write. But before I did that, I put all my genres underneath my name, which is Tanisha Stewart. So if you look at my name now, you'll still see a lot of those other genres in there. So you'll see like some of my Christian fiction series, some of my young adult series, romance series, a little bit of everything. And then the thrillers are all the most recent books.
Well, you answered my question, because I was just going to ask if you write all of those different genres under the same name. But
yeah, I used to, but I learned, I kind of knew this in the beginning, but I just didn't take it as seriously as I probably should have, because they always say that if you're going to write like different genres that are truly different from each other, for algorithmic purposes, it's best to like use a different pen name, just so Amazon doesn't get like confused, where like you put out a thriller this month and then like a contemporary romance next month. They're like, I don't know where to send your readers. So it is best to diversify.
Alienate, if you're writing children's books, let's say, and then you write an adult fiction book, you don't want to confuse those readers, those parents who are buying those children's books for their kids.
Absolutely, because they'll be like, oh, I thought she wrote children's books, and then some people will like get upset about it, and they'll be like, no, I was looking for children's books, and you got me reading all this extra stuff. And
yeah, well, there's some food for thought. I don't think I'm where I need a pen name yet, and I don't know what it would be if I would pick one, but I don't know. But I hadn't thought, that's that AI that finds. Now they're saying that AI is creating fake interviews with influencers, and the influencers will create a fake interview with somebody and put it on TikTok.
It's possible. I mean, I seen them where they did a song with like a famous artist, and it actually sounded like the artist. So I'm like, hey, anything's possible. If you can mimic their voice, you got them, basically.
Yeah, I guess people, I don't know where this AI is going, but we'll find out. We're learning where it's going, and it seems like a lot of people are using it as a shortcut to.
Oh yeah,
they are using it as a shortcut. There was a lady just yesterday who posted on her page that she was looking for an editor, and a couple of people tagged people. Somebody tagged me. Somebody tagged a couple of the authors, and then lo and behold, somebody comes along and says, "Chat GPT." And she said, no, that's nice, but I need a human touch for this.
Right. Now to like springboard off of that,
human touch.
Say that again.
I said Chat GPT is not going to give you that human touch.
No, it won't. But I will say that the Chat GPT and like the other, I've just learned about all these other ones that are like been around, I guess. They can be the assistant that you always wish you had.
I agree.
Like, so they can help you with like certain things where like, let's say you want to use it for email list or something, where you want to write like blog posts or something like that. You could just give it like the back or the bones of what you want to write, and then just have it write it for you, and then you just revise it. So it can help you with certain things like outlining, all of that, but I just wouldn't use it to replace what you're supposed to be doing. It's like supposed to be a supplement, not a replacement.
Exactly.
You know, AI first showed up with Google, with Gmail, completing your sentences.
Yep.
Because it does do that. Now it's helpful sometimes just to cut down on keystrokes. And they pretty much take what you normally would say. They just add on the additional 3-4 words. And then all you have to do is tab and it's
See,
done.
but I like ChatGPT because sometimes I just need to know where to start. And if I'm racking my brain and I don't know where to start, I might tell ChatGPT to draft an email for me.
Absolutely.
And then I'll look at it like, I don't sound like that.
Right. Like, I'm gonna take what you did and I'm just gonna revise this a little bit and put it in my own words. But thank you though.
One time, true story, it was so funny to me. I told ChatGPT to write a script for me. And I said, make it sound hip hop. And ChatGPT was like, yo, fam. I'm like, you know what? People are gonna know that this is not me.
Right.
When have you ever heard me say, yo, fam?
Right. It's hilarious.
I haven't ventured off into that yet. I hear about it, and I did go on to sign up. I said, okay, let me check this out. Then they wanted me to pay. I don't want to pay. So then
I use the free version.
Left it alone. Well, I don't know. Where's the free version? Let me.
ChatGPT is the free version.
I thought I went to it, and it wanted me to pay.
I don't know. I've never gotten charged on ChatGPT.
Okay, well, let me go again.
There's one called Ask Jasper. Now that one is a paid one.
No, it wasn't Jasper. I thought it was ChatGPT. That's what I typed in because that's the one I hear about. And when I went on there to create an account,
okay, paid version. I've only used the free one.
Okay.
Yeah, they have different ones. Yeah, they have like ChatGPT 4 and like some other versions, but one of them is paid, the other one's free. I use the free one.
Okay, you know what? The paid one is probably the one that they put in the Google search thing to come up first because they're paying for ads, so they need to pay for the ads. So I need to put free. That's what I'll do. I'll type in ChatGPT free. So it's interesting about. So how many pen names do you have currently?
I have 3 currently. So I have Tanisha Stewart, which is me. I have Niche Santiago, which is my I'm also a Christian artist, so I do rap and spoken word. So I have that, and I have my Christian fiction and nonfiction books underneath that one. And then I have Daisy Savage for my urban romance type urban books. And I have some more that I'm working on in the future.
Okay, so how did you decide these names?
Well, the Niche Santiago, that was my rap name, so I just used that for the pen name. And then the Daisy Savage, I just kind of made that one up because I thought it was cool. So
okay. But you know, I have heard from Christian fiction authors especially, more so than any other genre, that where the author writes in that genre and other genres too.
Oh yeah.
Where that creates a problem because
oh yeah, it definitely can.
The people are really like if they write urban or you know erotica, then one of their Christian fiction readers picks it up and they're upset.
That is the most frustrating thing. This is the reason why I didn't get into Christian fiction, because I'm a Christian. I wanted to write about Christians in relationships, but I didn't want to be pigeonholed because there are people who have very strong beliefs about Christian fiction. The character cannot cuss. The character cannot get upset. The character can do this. And I'm like, you know what?
Like, wait, what world do you live in?
They can barely have sex, even if they're married.
Thanks.
There's a lot of controversy. I mean, I can speak to that definitely. Like, I've had books where I've written where people be like, I thought you was a Christian. I'm like, I am. I am.
Question my grandmother, because my grandmother, God rest her soul, before she died, she was a huge New Orleans Saints fan. Football was her thing. And somebody asked her, you like football? But I thought you were a Christian. When do Christians want people to watch football?
Wait, I never heard that one. Is it because it's competitive? I know there are some groups who are like very, very, what's the word? Into asceticism, where they're like extreme.
Right. And that's why I'm saying that's the most frustrating thing to me about Christian fiction. And that was the reason why I never wrote Christian fiction. Now you will see that the characters in my books, I have Christians in my books. And sometimes they have messages, but I'm never going to call myself a Christian author because I just don't want to be put into that box. I want
But I mean, as long as you're still writing what you feel like you're supposed to be writing,
right.
Hey, like I wouldn't let anybody stifle your gift though. If you feel like you have a gift in that area and you feel like God is giving you something.
Oh, absolutely. That's the reason why I still put messages in my books. I still make sure that the characters in my books are Christians. I just don't call myself a Christian author because
I got you.
I don't want people to pigeonhole the stories that I'm writing.
Yeah,
right.
That box is real and confining.
It is in a lot of respects. It definitely is.
People told me my book, because my book has my novel has it's a mystery, but it has a biblical tie-in. So it's called the Genesis Files. That was my first one. So the second one is called.
I like that title.
I like these titles y'all coming up with.
The sequel is called Exodus from Treachery. So
hold on. I'm gonna write these down.
Exodus should be out. It's gonna be out before the festival. I'm tying it up now, and it's gonna be going to my editor. I'm getting the book cover. I'm getting the book cover for the Genesis Files redone, so they can be complementary. Because the time frame between my first book and the sequel is 10 years, but in the book only 5 years have passed. So I make it closer in time, and but there's a biblical tie-in. So one reviewer said, they gave me a 2 or 3.
Oh Lord.
They said that the author, this is how they worded it, the author can't figure out whether or not she wants to write a book about the Bible, Christians, or a mystery or a thriller. No, I didn't need to figure it out. First of all, it's my book. I wrote it the way I wanted to write it. And if you don't like it, too bad. This is what I want to write about. And the biblical tie-in is real. And most of the things that happen in my book are based on actual news stories because my main character is a journalist. So I did a departure in the sequel. It's more of a what if. I took a situation and did what if, and then took it, made the characters make the story happen. So, but people will tell you about, what you should, they put everything, it's like everything has to be a formula or cookie cutter. And that's not true. The industry is kind of like that.
Right. Yeah. One thing to say to that is like, if you see that most of the people who review the book kind of got what you were trying to give, then I think you're in a good place. But if you feel like if all the reviews are saying something's off, then we might have to be like, all right, I maybe have to look back at this book. But if most people like seem like they understood what you were trying to say, then I think you're good. And I wrote down the titles of your books, and yours was Cheating in the Next Room, right?
Oh, I have a few, but that was my very first
book.
Okay, I wrote it down just so I can go and look it up.
Okay, but
look for Rhonda M. Dawson. I always use my middle initial.
Okay, let me write that.
I love them. How many books do you have? Because you've written so many.
You had 60 or something like that?
I think it's like, if it's not 60, it's almost 60, somewhere around 60.
So how do you find your time to write?
For me, it's random because I try to be like, they say like write 2,000 words every day. Like I've tried that so many times, but it just simply never happens. My writing doesn't come to me until like the day before the deadline, usually. So it's like, oh, this is due tomorrow. All right, now the story wants to come to me. And then I'm like raking my hands trying to get this story written, all stressed out and stuff. And then it finally comes out. Like, oh, now you want to talk to me. I've been asking for you to talk to me this whole time, and now you got something to say.
I remember I had a deadline of December 31st. So on New Year's Eve, instead of partying and drinking champagne, I was finishing a book.
Terrible. That's how it goes. That is how it be going.
Aren't you Carl Weber?
Right.
Yeah, my deadlines are self-imposed because I self-published so
Yeah.
far. All
This
my
is the
books are
reason why I
self-published.
am now self I'm like, I can't adhere to these deadlines.
Right. Well,
Because my
I be
writing doesn't
self-publishing
have to be
too,
like
but I
that.
put it on pre-order, and that's what gets me. Because
Yeah,
with pre-order,
yeah,
you
you're
gotta
right.
have it by a certain day and time. So it's like,
Oh,
why did I do this?
see,
That's
I'm not brave enough to do that yet. I don't put mine out there for pre-order because then I'm really stuck like Chuck. So what I
Right.
do when I know when it's at the really when it's almost done, like it's been edited, I'm just waiting to pull it all together, get the PDF uploaded to check it. That's when I put it out there. I
See,
don't.
that's the smart way to do it. I need to
But
listen to that,
pre-orders
but
can
I'd
be
be like,
helpful.
I just get so excited about the story. I'd be like, all right, I just put it on pre-order. It's gonna flow. It's gonna flow. And then 4 days before the deadline, I still ain't got nothing written.
So
Terrible.
how does the pre-ordering thing, does that work well for you in terms of your sales? I've never tried it, so.
I've tried it and it works for some books and not for others. Like I find it works best for series or books that are like heavily anticipated. So if people like really like your cover or they really like whatever you said about the story so far, they'll do the pre-orders. Or if it's a series where like they love book 1, you'll find that a lot of readers will start to pre-order book 2 and book 3, and some will just go ahead and order the whole thing. So it could definitely be a good thing for an author to like to do pre-orders when they have a series.
Okay, but that deadline, now can you change the release date?
You can, but the
Makes
caveat
the
to that
readers
is
mad?
yeah, it makes the readers mad, and also you can only do it twice within a year. So
Okay.
like if you do it twice within that year, they won't let you put any more books on pre-order for the whole rest of the year, and also you they will cancel um the rest. I think they like cancel the rest of your pre-orders or something like that. So it's like there's a
Okay, so
penalty
there's a
for it.
penalty. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, well.
So
yeah.
that adds to the pressure. You're like, okay, I really have to get this done now.
So you self-publish all of your books?
Mhm.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of
Well,
books.
actually, I have one that I was part of there was a publisher who reached out to myself as well as 6 other authors, and it's called the 7 Deadly Sins series. So the book that I have underneath that is underneath the publisher, but all the rest of my books are self-published.
Oh, okay. And how long have you, are you writing full-time?
Well, I have a full-time income from writing, but I don't write full-time as far as like my job. I have a whole bunch of jobs.
Okay.
So,
You have a day job and a couple of other side hustles.
oh yeah. So I teach psychology, as you already know, and then I
Mhm.
also do I do editing and formatting. I do a bunch of literary entrepreneurial type stuff.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, well, that's great though. You most of the time people that you hear about that have that many titles,
Mhm.
they have some self-published, but they're with a publishing
Mhm.
house. It's a combination. But
Right.
that's a lot of work for
It is.
congratulations.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
so do you have a particular artist that you use for your covers? Or for different ones, do you use the same one, or you have different ones depending on the type of covers? The type of
Yeah, so all of my Christian books, I have Aisha Bree, who's IB Designs. I have her doing those. And then all my thrillers, I have Carrie Bledsoe. She's not on Facebook, but I just love how she does thriller covers. So I use her for all of those. And those are the 2 main ones. I also used Tyora Moody in the past for Christian fiction.
Okay,
So
I know her.
I haven't worked with that many people, but the people I have worked with have been excellent.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Mhm.
Well, we want to make sure people know how to reach you on all your books.
Like this fast. I was enjoying this interview. I'm a little upset.
Who said that?
Me, I'm like, I was enjoying
Oh.
the interview and it went by so fast.
It did. It kind of flew by.
I thought I'm looking at the comments. I thought somebody said that they were upset.
Oh,
So-
well, we did put your link in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so y'all go out there. You know what I always say, go out there and order these books. And leave some reviews. Let's give Miss Tanisha the love and the flowers that she deserves.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's all good. You know, author to author, I know how it is.
Oh yeah, definitely. Put them rating. Even if you don't leave me a review, leave a rating. Just a rating.
I want a
Something.
rating and a review. I want
Yeah, rating, do it all.
I want all the things.
All of it. But if it's only a number, let it be 5.
Right. There you go. There you go.
All right, Tanisha, thank you so much for being a guest on Black Authors Matter TV. And
Thank you guys.
I'm amazed at all the books you've written and self-published. And, you know, all these authors that have dozens of titles, you know,
Yes.
that gives me a goal. You know,
Oh yeah.
to strive for. So have a great evening, and people can find you online and on social media under Tanisha Stewart for the most part.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, you have a great evening, and thank you again.
You too. Thank you both.
Keep doing what you're doing. Bye.
Goodbye.
Okay. Now our final guest is not on, and so we need to contact her, I guess, and find out what's going on. Do you want to reach out to her, Rhonda?
Yeah, I'll call her. Where's her phone
Okay,
number?
it's on there.
Right now.
And in fact, if I had Julia Royce's number, I would contact her as well, because she was the one who assigned her. Oh, there she is. Okay, so I guess she heard us talking about her, and she decided to come on. So our next guest, our final guest for tonight is Tasha Dawson, and her book is called God's Masterpiece. So we were getting ready to call you, Tasha, because the 8:30 had come up and we didn't see you on there. But welcome to Black Authors Matter TV. Oh, you need to unmute your mic.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So you're out and about.
That was about
Yeah.
the whole thing. Where are you out here? Are you out there partying?
No, working, still working.
Still
Yeah, still working.
okay. Well, you are one of the authors with BK Royston Publishing, and you are also an evangelist and educator. So just tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay. Well, I'm actually I know a lot of people may say this, just kind of stumbled upon writing. So just been kind of a writer all throughout my life, but not necessarily professionally. So through evangelistical work, writing sermons and being a youth minister and writing things for the youth, it's kind of always just been there underlining. But with the books, it was actually, so when I do speak and I talk about, anytime I talk about doing missions trips, which is what my first book was about a missions trip I went on to Nigeria. I always have youth that ask me, how do I become a missionary? How can I do missions work? I want to go. And so it was from that point of reference that I thought about, that I said, you know what? I never had anything to read when I was younger about going to a missions trip, being a missionary. That was even an option. And so I just had the thought of writing the first book about something that happened while we were there. So everybody that went was actually adults, but I just turned us into kids.
Okay, so how did you get into doing missionary work, and how did you end up going to Nigeria as your destination?
Well, I feel like if you have things that you love in life, just go after those things that you love, and your destiny and purpose will find you. So I love to travel. I love young people. I've always been in and around education. And so I was working for a nonprofit in Hampton, Virginia, and we had a federal grant for teen pregnancy prevention. And so through that grant, we had to have community partners in order to teach our program to. So it was one of those community partners that just came up to me, and he was like, Tasha, I'm going to Nigeria next year, and we go twice a year. And I think it's something that you would really love. And at first I said, oh, no, I'm not going, I don't have time. But he just kept saying, I think you'll love it. And finally, as our partnership continued, I just said, I'll go. And with that one trip, I just fell in love with it. So I've been Nigeria a couple times, Egypt, just the various places, just doing missions for youth. So just partnering what you love in life, and then how God is leading and guiding you, and your destiny and purpose will be born.
Well, I felt like you read my mind, because I was
Okay.
just going to ask, what guidance or advice would you give someone who is maybe thinking of going on a missions trip?
Well, the first thing I always tell people is missions is everywhere. So a lot of times people want to take huge trips, to other countries. I say start local first. Just start local first. And when you start local first, not only are you gaining skills in terms of relating with people, but you're also gaining valuable partnerships. So our global missions couldn't be possible without our local partnerships. So it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of coordination and logistics. So when we go, we're taking books, we're taking clothing, we're taking shoes, and we're taking cargo, a lot of weight of that, so we're paying for all those tubs to go with us, to be filled with stuff to give away. So that's stuff that we're getting from our local community. So when we're going, we're representing all the people who helped us to get there. So I always advise people, start local first. There's always things that you can do at home. I'm just thinking about just some things right here in the United States. We're going through a heat wave right now. What a great idea just to give away popsicles or water bottles, or, things like that. Just think about the need that your community has, and then what can you do to help? So even though I'm saying water bottles, that's also applicable to Flint, Michigan, because Flint, everybody in Flint still doesn't have,
Right. Don't think
water.
because it's not in the news anymore that everything is resolved.
Exactly. And it's not. So there are issues, all across the United States that you can get young people involved in, get them excited about, to help them build up to larger missions. Also, the second thing I say too, a lot of people say, I want to go, but they're not ready to go. Get your passport, get that ready, get your visa, wherever country you want to go, start studying about that country. What's the local language? What's the currency? What's the food?
Go to the State Department website and see if there are any advisories that you need to adhere to.
Exactly. So right now, like in Haiti, so you may say, oh, I want to go to Haiti. But right now, the U.S. government is advising all Americans don't travel to Haiti right now, because it's dangerous and things like that. So always check that too before you go.
And I think
Great
didn't they
advice.
close the embassy, the United States Embassy in Haiti? Didn't they just close it because of the fighting?
Yes.
What was going on there?
Yes. And so they did evacuate, I think, all of their workers and everything. Yeah. And so that's another point. Keep abreast of where you're traveling.
That's true. So how long did you stay in Nigeria? The times that you've been, how long did you stay there?
Usually we're going for about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a team over there of pastors and youth workers and a chaplain of a prison. And so we coordinate with them in terms of where we're going to go and things like that. So logistics. So that's important too, to make sure, that someone there where you're going, so that, you're just not going there in the dark. They know the lay of the land, they know the language, they know the people, so you want to make sure that you have people there who can assist you.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you had some real international experiences, the things that not from a tourist perspective per se, from a worker perspective. Now, you said the nonprofit that you started off with was in Hampton. Where in I'm from Newport News. So where in Hampton was it?
And I used to live on the beach. So, we have a whole Kevin Bacon thing going on here.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow. So I lived in Hampton for 13 years. I love that area. That
Oh, okay.
DMV area is something special. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
really pretty there. That, I mean, it's very, because the water is water is everywhere, surrounded by water.
uh-huh.
On three sides was a peninsula, and it's and the weather is just so the summer weather is really nice. You know,
Yeah.
it's not too hot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's what I liked about it. Not too hot, not too cold.
right.
So,
They do
yeah.
get snow,
Yeah.
but normally it's not like the deeper snow. You know,
Right. Right.
a few
Right.
inches, but they do get snow, and it does get cold. And but it did when I went from there to Washington. This is it's colder. I mean, it's not that far north, but because that area is near the water, it doesn't get as much of the snow. But
Yeah.
DC was a lot colder and a lot more snow.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So the organization that I worked with was called Lighthouse Outreach.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a teen pregnancy prevention was our major grant. And so we worked on that for almost 10 years dealing with that. So we did that. We also did a food bank with USDA, a partnership with USDA to give food out to the community. And then other events that we had too, but that was our major funding.
okay, was it a church affiliated nonprofit, or was it just strictly a nonprofit?
Well, it was founded by Christ Church Ministries with Bishop Robert A. Baker. And so he is the founder of the nonprofit, and then they receive federal grants.
Okay. So as a you're an educator as well. So you wear a lot of different hats. So are you teaching at what level do you teach? Is it elementary, middle school, high school, college?
Well, middle school was what I was teaching. And normally, but with the nonprofit, we were teaching middle and high school. So we were going through the family life education classes and teaching. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what did, when you were teaching pregnancy prevention, what was your approach?
Well, our approach was abstinence. And so what we were doing was checking to see if two different curriculums, which one worked the best. But our approach was unique because we were not just saying no to sex, but we were saying yes to your goals and your dreams. So it's called the Dare to Dream program. Saying yes to entrepreneurship. We're saying yes to, planning out your future family. So that was really the premise of our program. A lot of times with teen pregnancy prevention, a lot of times youth and teens will hear a no, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. But what we wanted to do is open their eyes to things that they could do. So even a teen waiting 2 more years to get pregnant or 2 more years to have a child means a lot in terms of economically. It means a lot in terms of developmentally for their child, the opportunities that they had. So what we were trying to do was help the teens to visualize their futures. And then if they had that vision of where their future was going, it wouldn't be as hard to, abstain from sex during middle school. So believe it or not, young people are having sex even in elementary school, and so the longer that you can get them to wait, studies show that the greater their economic success will be, the greater it is that their chance of going to college will be, things like that. So,
And I would say often when it comes to teaching a young person to say no to sex, we can't approach it from a shame point of view.
right.
Because I've learned it growing up. When we approach it from a shame point of view, they're still going to do it, but they feel so bad about it. They don't tell anybody, so they don't get the help that they need to break free from it.
Right,
So
right,
I'm
right.
really glad that you're looking at this in a different way. Well, let's channel some of those attentions to bettering yourself, or bettering your plight, so to speak.
Mhm.
If you let this get in the way, you won't be able to do this. And I
Mhm.
think it's a better way of approaching that situation than to just say, "Oh, you should feel ashamed about what you're doing."
Right, right. And a lot of times too, shame will come, especially if you're not actively engaging your child or your young person in talking about what is sex. So, a lot of times parents, mentors, grandmothers, uh, grandfathers will wait, well, I'm going to wait until they turn 16 to talk about, sex. And even then, the conversation is not a full conversation. But in reality, like I said, there are girls, getting pregnant in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. So if you waited until you're 16, it's far too long. And a lot of times that can also bring in shame and guilt, because I may be active, you're not talking to me about it, and so I'm trying to hide it from you.
Right.
Yeah, we also talked about STDs with young people as well, as far as avoiding, risky behaviors to avoid STDs. And with one of our partners, they went in and talked to kids about HIV and AIDS. And when I asked them, I said, "What's the youngest class that you've ever taught?" She said kindergarten.
Mm.
So they're seeing images on social media, they're seeing it on TV, but we're waiting very, very late to talk to our kids about it. So by the time, if you're waiting until they're in high school, they already have seen a lot of stuff going on in school. They've already seen a lot of stuff on I'll use this as an example: Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, Real Housewives of New York, Potomac. They've already seen a lot of stuff. And so their image of what sex is, what it's supposed to be, and I'll say this: a healthy relationship has already been formed by what they see on TV. Because you, as their role model, you as their parent, haven't been open as far as talking to them about it and releasing that shame and that guilt. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So I
those
think it's
relationships on those shows are not examples of healthy relationships. I've only
right.
seen like clips of a few of them, because to me it's just so over the top ghetto. I'm sorry. But anyway, I just can't. I can't. It's just not something I want to see. But the thing about girls that's different for boys, girls get emotional. They think they're in love, or they think a boy will love them or like them more if they have sex. And that's never been true ever in the history of young teenagers or children. No, he's just trying to get what he wants and move on. That's what he's trying to do. I mean, and I don't fault him for wanting to do that, because that's what his body's telling him. But the girl is the one that's going to be stuck with the problem. She can't
Right.
move on. And so that's why it's just so important
She's
for
never
girls to have a
never
whole
been
picture.
taught how to take control of those emotions and those
Right.
feelings. If she's never been taught how to empower herself, then she's always going to be a victim to sexual feelings.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you had, like you said, you all show them what their future can look like. Because a
Right.
lot of times they haven't thought about, well, if I do this, it's going to derail. I won't be able to go to college, or I won't be able to even play sports. I mean,
Right.
your whole life will be, the trajectory of your entire life will be changed. And the other thing is, if you have a baby as a young girl, let's say 14 or 15, the chances that you're going to have another one as a
Right.
teenager are almost 100%. I mean, it's,
Right.
once that cycle starts, it's hard to stop it. So it's better to, nobody's saying never have sex, because it's part of life, but
Right.
just wait until you're ready. And you're not ready as a teenager. really. Definitely not in middle school or high school. You're just not emotionally, you're not ready. You might think, and if you're thinking this is gonna make, I hear teenage girls say this is just, I'm like, wow, I wish people had more information, but they're thinking that'll make him closer to me, or that'll make him have to be involved in my life. No, no, that means you're gonna have his kid that he probably won't see or see very sparingly, and it'll be your responsibility and your whole
Right.
life. So they need some reality, it's just a real talk.
I think Gwen feels very strongly about this issue.
I talked to my daughter about this, and she and I
Good.
put a book together
Oh,
called
good.
Faith, and it was 12 life-changing principles for teen girls. And one of the chapters is teenage boys are not dependable. That's just a fact. And they need to know that. It's not a knock on the boy. That's how his development is. He's not thinking past today or tomorrow or whatever. They're just not. And girls might be thinking about the future, the wedding, the house, making home, having a baby. We think more like, I don't know what these young girls are thinking now, but I'm just saying what we used to think about, the future with him. He's not most likely not thinking about that. So
Right.
we have to just give them a reality check, but lovingly, in a loving way.
Right. 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 Right.
They won't ruin their lives, because this stuff it ruins your life. I mean, you love your baby once you have it, but it changes your whole life if you
Right.
have it when you're really not ready.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
I applaud you for doing this work, and you did it for so many years. Hands-on, you were in the field, just
You're in there.
in there.
Miss Tasha, what's next for you? What else do you have planned with this platform?
Well, so with Impact Kids, very grateful for my publisher, Julia Royston. So I actually knew her for many years, but I didn't know. I moved to Virginia and I saw her at one of my friends' book signings. And so I had no clue that she had went on to be a publisher. And so when I saw her, I told her, hey, I've had an idea for a book. And she said, give me a call. Well, it was 2 years before I ended up calling her. And when I called her, she said, what took you so long? And I said, you were waiting for me? Yeah. I said, you were waiting for me? And she was like, I've been waiting for you, And so I was very excited about that. So I published my first book, and then I had published my second book, and then it's platformed out. So now I have my own children's boutique. So it's called Impact Kids Boutique. And so it's really just been growing as far as the Impact Kids and what we're doing. And then I just had someone approach me and ask me, do I write lessons for youth groups? So for like VBS or like a VBS kid or something like that. And I told them that I would work on trying to get something together for them. So really just kind of, everybody says, they'll ask me, well, what is your business plan? And I just tell them, I pray. That's my plan. I said, because honestly, if you would have asked me, are you going to be, it was never in my mind to be a children's book author. It was never in my mind to be an author, to be a business owner, anything, but I do am naturally an adventurous person, so I like new things. I like adventure. I pray. So I, leading on God's guidance, as far as what I feel like he wants me to do. And then I also keep close connections with friends and family. So, so I'm kind of listening to what are people needing right now? What's some more areas that they would like to be engaged in, or, what's some books out there that they need that they don't have, and just take it from there. So right now, just, continue with my shop, and like I said, working on those lessons plans for that youth group. But who knows, the sky is no longer the limit. We've learned that. Now we can go even past the sky.
Yes.
So, yeah. Yeah, we can go past the sky.
So When was the last time you were in Nigeria, and do you plan to go again, or do you plan any other mission trips to other countries?
Yes, I do plan to go. So we were actually going in March of 2020. And we were going, and we started hearing some of the reports of just things happening around the world. And we had bought our tickets and everything. So we were going at the end of March. And finally, we just decided, let's just wait to see, because we didn't know what was happening. And we said, well, we'll wait. Let's put it out to June. And of course, we couldn't go in June either because of COVID. So we haven't been back. Yeah. So, but we are planning to go March 2024. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And the same,
Yeah.
same length of time, same
Yeah.
mission
Yeah.
objective.
Yeah, same length of time. And it's just so rewarding to go. You know, I think everybody needs to travel out of the country. You just, yeah.
Right. I agree.
Say that again.
We both agree. We both agree.
It's
Yeah.
it's a whole different world that you get to be exposed to, and you realize that your country is not the be all and end all of the entire world.
Exactly. And depending on what country you go to, you're so grateful for the things that you have. You know, grateful for you are able to go to school, you know, and not have to pay to go to school.
Right.
You know, so in Nigeria, they have to pay school fees to go. And if they can't pay those fees, they can't go to school, you know. So, you know, when you do travel, as I said, that exposure is bar none. It also, I think, stimulates your creativity, you know. So if you are thinking about writing or want to write a book, take a trip. You know, there's nothing like it. You know, I often tell people I'm most creative when I've had rest and when my mind is at ease. But when I'm stressed and it's a lot of things going on and I feel overwhelmed, it's hard for me to be creative. You know, so if you're thinking about writing a book, take a trip. You know, go somewhere, relax. Take your pen, take your laptop, your iPad, whatever you want to do. Because that's when I think the creative juices really start flowing and, you know, you can write.
Well, that's good advice.
Yeah.
For people, because I don't know if people can be creative under stress or not. I don't know if there's like a hormone or one of those things that's emitted in your body that stunts your creativity if you're stressed out. You know, it probably is some science behind it.
Probably. Yeah.
So, with your Nigeria, where did you go in Nigeria? Which
so we went to we went to Port Harcourt, Nigeria.
Okay.
Port Harcourt. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Everywhere in Nigeria is going to be unique.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And you know, a lot of people don't realize too, you know, all of those, Nigeria is its own country, you know, so Africa is made up of many, many, many countries. So yeah, so you could go to Ghana and have a completely, totally different experience than when you go to Nigeria or when you go to South Africa or Egypt or, you know, so it's its own culture, its own people, you know, its own food, you know, so it's just great. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people reference Africa like Australia. Australia is a country and a continent. Africa is not. It's a continent with many, many countries.
Yeah,
so, but a lot of people kind of treat it like it's one thing, and it's many, many, many cultures there.
Right, right.
Well, we're at the end of our interview, Tasha. We want to make sure people can get your book, and your website is TashaDawson.com, correct?
Yes, and that will direct you also to theimpactkids.com. Theimpactkids.com. And so on that website is clothing from my store, gifts, accessories, the books, and also the latest news and what we're doing at our store. So theimpactkids.com. And also, of course, you can order the books on Amazon.
Okay, well, I also put that in the chat as well.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And you continue to do your good works and have a great evening.
All right. Thank you so much for having me on. I loved it.
Okay.
I'm glad. I'm glad, and I enjoyed having you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so that's it for this week. Next week, tune in because we'll be announcing the finalists for the Black Authors Matter Children's Book Awards. And that will be in the second half of the show next week between the 8 and 9 o'clock hours if you are on Central Time, or the 9 and 10 o'clock hours if you are on Eastern Time. So that's our show for tonight. I'm Gwen Richardson signing off.
And I'm Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Have a wonderful evening and a great week.
Thank you for tuning in, and join us next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Black Authors Matter TV.